What about the doors that opens up of education, that opens up of something that can help them with care or things of that nature to clean them up? We be having brothers and sisters come on the street and just get free haircuts because that's all they can do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like communities be wanting to help, but they only have so many funds that they, like he said, they don't have enough funds for them to actually do what they got to do. What's good, y'all? It's the Demouchets REACT, and we're back with another video. Who we got today, C?
Today we're back with another American reaction. Super excited about this video, guys. If you're new to us and we're new to you, make sure you scroll down,
hit that subscribe button,
and turn on the post notification bell
because we're on the road to 100K.
And we cannot get there without you guys, alright? Join the family. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
Brought to you by CuriosityStream. Get free access to Nebula, the streaming platform built by all your favorite YouTubers, when you sign up for CuriosityStream at the link below. About 600,000 people experience homelessness in the US. Think about your own life. You might not be homeless, or necessarily even know someone who is or has been. But you certainly know someone paying too much for rent, someone having trouble finding a place to live, someone facing eviction. In other words, someone who could become homeless without much needing to go wrong. More and more Americans are joining this category every day. The truth is that in 95% of US counties, those who work a full-time minimum wage job cannot afford even a one-bedroom apartment. Change that to a two-bedroom and the entire country becomes unaffordable. This situation is only getting worse. As a result of the pandemic, rising housing costs, wage stagnation, and the inadequate policies of our local and federal governments, the number of people experiencing homelessness and of people on the brink has been steadily growing for the past decade. That is, if you only look at the US. In this episode, we're looking at Finland's approach to homelessness, what housing first is, and what it could mean for the American economy. In Finland, only about 5,000 people, 0.1% of the population, are homeless. And that's even with the broadest definition of what constitutes homelessness, which includes more than who you typically think of when you hear the term. The Finnish definition of homelessness goes beyond just those who are living on the street or in emergency accommodations like shelters. In some cities, like the country's capital Helsinki, no one sleeps on the street. That type of homelessness has been completely eliminated. Compare that to the US's nearly 600,000 homeless people, which is almost exclusively so-called rough sleepers, those who live on the street, and the problem starts to become apparent. What's more important, though, is that homelessness isn't just low in Finland, it's actively going down. Between 2010 and 2018, Finland enjoyed a massive 40% decline in the homelessness rate. If it sounds like we're
a matter of 8 years, what did they do?
Right.
Like, I would love to know the answer to that. Like, if you're new here, you don't know, like, our heart for people in the homeless community.
Right.
But, like, this is a topic. If you go on our family channel, you'll see.
Yeah.
You know, our initiatives, and it's a sensitive, sore topic for us. So we're very interested in seeing what they did.
Right. Or you could just put that in the comment section and just explain it from your point of view, because that's different. Like, they cleaned it up. What was the trick?
And I don't think it's hard either.
Nah, at all. At all.
cherry-picking data, even during the pandemic, which, let me remind you, has caused a massive surge of homelessness in the US, homelessness in Finland did not increase. So what happened? How is Finland so effectively reducing homelessness? In 2007, the Finnish government started a national Housing First program. Housing First is a philosophy that argues that to make progress on homelessness, particularly chronic homelessness, you need more than temporary emergency solutions. You need permanent housing right out the gate. In other words, housing is the starting point, not the end point. The way Housing First programs work is pretty simple. People experiencing homelessness receive independent housing immediately, without having to first fulfill mental health, sobriety, income, employment, or other requirements. Once they're housed, support services are offered, not imposed, and over time, the newly housed begin to finance part of the cost of their housing to the degree that they can afford it. It sounds pretty intuitive, but this is very different from the more common continuum of care or staircase approach we're mostly using. In continuum of care...
So do they actually like build these homes, or do they just like, I guess you could say, renovate other buildings and move people in that way?
Yeah.
Because I just out of curiosity, it kind of gives me like that idea, like when people are looking for that quick job and how they're able to just put them on a job. When people are looking for ways to get off the streets, they have these homes available that they could just put them in, and then they have these resources that help them maintain payments with bills and whatnot until they get situated.
This is starting to sound like Section 8 a little bit for me. Although it's hard for people to get into Section 8 because people don't leave when they need to. So,
sucks for other people to get
like,
in. It's supposed to be a rotating door.
Yeah, I remember there was a discussion on Facebook of people saying the boomers need to get out the home so we can get in the program. Yeah, I
remember that. Yo, that's crazy.
Yeah, so this is what it's starting to sound like to me. Yeah.
Care programs, homeless people are expected to make progress on any mental health or addiction issues they may have, and to pass a certain standard before being housed. In this system, housing is at the top of the staircase. These individual changes that these programs require are the sorts of things that are incredibly difficult to address when you are still contending with the anxiety of not having a home, possibly still sleeping on the street. In these continuum of care programs, only once you have demonstrated some change, which we should keep in mind is incredibly difficult to achieve without housing stability, do these programs graduate you into housing arrangements. First shared housing, and slowly over time independent housing. To some, continuum of care approaches sound great. That is, in theory. They map onto our society's values of meritocracy, of security. Only those who are deserving...
And from what it looked like, there's a gentleman in there who was checking in on her frequently, right? So just to make sure she don't relapse or do anything that's crazy that's going to put her back in the position that she was in. I see what's going on. This is very helpful. Very helpful.
Right, so what Finland did is basically flipped it. Address the problem and address the other problems that you want to take care of later. I respect that, because when a person's homeless and you want to address their mental health and their other issues, being homeless, that affects your mental health. Having to worry about where you're going to lay your head, having to worry about where you're going to use the restroom.
Let alone shower. Like,
right.
Just the basic stuff you do when you wake up in the morning, they can't get any of it, they can't do any of those things.
Get access to the prize of having a home. Under this mentality, if you don't have a home, it must be because you're just not good enough yet. Come back later. It should be obvious that these programs just don't work. Not only do they strip people of their agency and come with an enormous moral burden, but recidivism is high, and a huge number of people don't make it into the program in the first place because of the high barrier to entry. Compare that to Housing First. In the initial study on Housing First, back in 2003, a randomized trial of the two approaches decidedly shows the strength of the new program. Around half of the initially homeless group were accepted into permanent housing, regardless of their eligibility according to other programs, and they were then offered tailored and optional care for their individual circumstances. The other half went through conventional channels, and at the end of the trial, the results were clear. The Housing First group spent more time in stable housing, less time hospitalized, and results carried over for longer than when homeless people went through the continuum of care path.
And this is firsthand experiences of knowing people who has faced homelessness.
Yeah.
They would either do something to go to jail, because at least they have a bed, or they'll go to the hospital. At least they have somewhere to lay for a little while.
Yeah.
That's sad.
That's a true story.
That's
true
sad.
Story.
Within just 6 months, Housing First had virtually eliminated homelessness in the experimental group. It was a massive success. That first study was in New York, and inspired by its promising results, the EU ran its own pilot programs in 5 European countries with the same outcome: secure, long-term housing stability. And now that it's become the official national policy of the Finnish government, we've seen just how much good this can achieve. It is abundantly clear that this approach works. Despite all of this, some of you might still be skeptical. Forget for a second that housing is a universal right we are all entitled to. that it is baked into the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which the US has signed onto and agreed to provide in front of the entire international community. Forget that this right doesn't include temporary shelters, but only real, stable housing, and that there are metrics around accessibility, affordability, discrimination, and protection from eviction which good Housing First programs conform to perfectly, in addition to affirming the basic idea of being decent to real human people. You might still wonder about costs in the wealthiest country in the world that regularly provides housing subsidies mostly to the wealthiest people in the country through mortgage interest tax deductions costing the American people, I don't know, $70 billion a year, or close to 25 times what is set aside for homelessness programs at the federal level. Imagine all that incredibly important stuff doesn't matter. It's gone. Forget about it. Housing First is still cheaper than not housing people or walking them through an ineffective continuum of care program. Not only are people housed through Housing First covering part of the cost and are more easily employed, but housing people saves money in the long term on comparatively costly emergency hospitalization bills and absurdly expensive policing, which both go down when 1. People's needs are taken care of preventatively, and 2. They aren't exposed to an expensive state apparatus that has criminalized existing without a house.
Yep.
Given all this evidence, you're probably wondering, why aren't we doing this? To be fair, there are some small-scale examples of this in the US. The US Department of Housing and Urban Development does fund certain homelessness programs, some of them with the Housing First methods. However, these programs are only robust in a few cities and states. But no matter the nature of the program, whether it's Housing First, continuum of care, or something else, funding is far too low. The HUD's budget and municipal aid funds have steadily declined over time, and as a result, programs scrape together a budget from the general public and several different local and federal funds, rarely ever amounting to what they actually need to provide effective services. But the main problem behind all of this isn't that homelessness programs aren't getting enough funding. That is an issue just a little further down the line. The underlying...
And before we get to the underlying, and this is my issue with the way that our society handles our homeless community. They know where the camps are. And after a certain amount of time, like sometimes it's like right after a holiday, they will come in with the bulldozers and everything and start tearing down their tents and things. Like, that is so inhumane. Like, could you imagine already not having anywhere to lay your head? You create a place to lay your head outside, and then you come back from, getting food or something to find your temporary home outside. It's all messed up.
You see that, y'all? Our system be having some priorities as they be trying to prioritize, and I feel like the people need to always be first, because without people you don't thrive at all in any area. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of education, without people, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I feel like they always need to be looked at and helped regardless. I mean, we have shelters and we have locations where, food banks and stuff where they can go and get quick meals and everything just so they can keep energy going. But what about the doors that opens up of education, that opens up of something that can help them with care or things of that nature to clean them up? We be having brothers and sisters come on the street and just get free haircuts because that's all they can do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like communities be wanting to help, but they only have so many funds that they, like he said, they don't have enough funds for them to actually do what they got to do.
And what we're seeing, yes, this is the image of homelessness, but what about the people who live in a car or live in a hotel? Like, the way I've never heard of nothing like that before, and so that kind of creates an anger in me. Like, we do what we can as a family for our homeless community, but we're just a simple family,
Right. Just like they have plenty of applications on the web to file and say, hey, I need a job. They should have many applications for the homelessness to pack their bags and say, okay, if I run here, I know I can get myself together.
Exactly.
But you don't see that. Like, that's really, like you said, there's only a few cities and a few states.
Right, and they criminalize the homeless community.
100%.
Everybody who's homeless didn't start off to be whatever y'all criminalizing them to be. Some people may have just gotten laid off from a job, just got home, don't have any family. Like, seriously, there's some people who don't have family when they get out of, prison or whatever.
Relationship problems.
So much.
We had this is us helping a brother who was homeless this one time.
Yeah.
My family and I, you know what I'm saying, we was going shopping or something, and this brother was, what he was doing, I think he was standing outside.
Standing outside of auto.
I mean, you got to name the location, but
a store.
He was standing outside and he asked for, something to drink. If I came with something to drink, and I said, yeah, I could help you, but it's gonna be more than just me giving you something to drink. And as a family, we got together, we talked about it and see what we can do. And he ended up breaking down the story, and it was like, yo, relationship. You know what I'm saying? It's like, wow. And people be having stories. You just need to sit back and listen. And I feel like that's what we all need to do before you get into the sign and everything, because they be like, hey, I need this, that, and the third. What really happened?
Right.
Let's get to the core, because if that's not fixed, then you're going to be holding this forever.
Right. So I did write this story out on my Facebook. Don't come send me no friend requests. Okay?
Oh, my gosh.
But I do have that story. It's a really good story. I'm a writer. That's my profession. I know outside of, my broken English, I write very eloquently. Okay. But anyway, the title of that story, if you type in my name and then you type in my family spent the weekend with a 20-something-year-old murderer.
Okay.
That is the topic.
Oh Lord, we got so many stuff to tell y'all. Boy.
Yeah, like
Lord.
we care for our homeless community.
Yeah.
Problem is affordable housing, and at the core of that problem is our capitalist organization of the economy. Under a capitalist economy, housing isn't treated like the right it's considered to be by most nations, including, on paper, the United States. Instead, it's a commodity, something to be traded, speculated on, turned for a profit. That is the main goal of housing in a commodity market. Not putting people in homes, making money. As a result, developers, investors, and the like don't focus their energy on housing the poor, from whom they can only extract so much, but rather on building luxury accommodations for the wealthy, leaving largely empty units across the country only rarely occupied, if at all, while people in desperate need of housing are refused access and subjected to a manufactured housing scarcity. On top of that, there is a very real incentive for capitalists to only partially resolve homelessness. The threat of losing the roof over your head keeps even the most exploited worker in a job they hate. Increasingly, that threat forces people into even more dire conditions as wages become less and less sufficient to cover housing costs, forcing people to take on several jobs and work untenable hours to avoid the possibility of eviction. It is not in the capitalist interest to remove that powerful, terrifying incentive. And here is where the Finnish success story may go.
Why, in any society, any country, I don't care third, first, I don't care what kind of world country. Why is why, if I have a job, I should be able to cover my house. Why do people have jobs and they cannot cover their house, rent, mortgage, whatever? That's sad.
That is crazy.
It's pitiful.
That is a fixed society. I ain't gonna say society, fixed system. Because you go to work and you know you're about to get all this money, but you gotta literally save to starve, or you gotta eat to spend. You know what I'm saying? So it's like
your paycheck can't cover the whole rent.
Nah, never. Your paycheck don't cover your bills.
It's crazy. And then what you're left with? Nothing. So now you gotta figure out how you're gonna eat. And then you go apply for food stamps and they're saying you make too much money. And you're like, where?
Where? Because I ain't spent none of it on me. None of it.
Shoot.
Bruh.
Not only is Housing First doing a good job of taking people out of homelessness in a reliable way, but a social democratic organizing of the economy is limiting the extent to which people are likely to fall into it in the first place. It's still capitalism, so it still relies on somebody being exploited, in this case people in the global south, but at the very least, social democracy goes part of the way on neutering perverse capitalist incentives on continuing homelessness domestically. One key element of this is unionization. High unionization at 75% of the Finnish workforce, and therefore higher wages and higher job security than in freer markets, mean that as people exit homelessness, they are unlikely to be replaced or fall back into it themselves. American conservatives love to rail against Housing First, touting its failures to make significant changes in cities like Los Angeles, where homelessness has continued to rise despite Housing First programs taking root. What they conveniently forget to mention is that the continuum of care programs they prefer still deliver worse results. And the core issue of the skyrocketing housing prices in the free market is why people are even pushed out into homelessness in the first place. The thing is, it doesn't have to be this way. There are solutions to reduce the scale of this issue. Earlier this year, the Gravel Institute released a great video on one of these solutions, the decommodification of housing. I'll put a link to that video and all of the sources for this one in the description. At the end of the day, the conclusion that you should take away from the Finnish case isn't just that this one type of program works really well at taking people out of an incredibly difficult situation for the benefit of everyone. It does do that, but that's not the point. The Finnish example gives us a glimpse of how we can treat housing differently. Instead of being a game for the wealthy to gamble their own fortunes and the livelihoods of millions of Americans, Housing First shows us what housing really is: a necessity, a right. It's something that must come before almost everything else. Something which we must guarantee, or fail to recognize the humanity of millions of people.
We're going to end it right there, okay?
Yeah, so this was a lot, and we did start getting a little bit personal.
Yeah, and I mean, and not to cut you off, but we can, like, the conversation can go there. You feel me?
Yeah, it could, but we're not gonna let it go there.
Yeah.
So let us know, have you ever been threatened with homelessness, you know, in any capacity? Let us know your experiences.
And
okay?
if you are recovering, you know what I'm saying, if you're comfortable putting that information on there, you may, just to give you testimony so people can see, and you know, whoever is just eyeballing it, know ways that they can come out of their situation as well.
Yeah. Especially if you live in the United States. Because some people just may not know about certain programs.
Facts.
So let's discuss that in the comment section below. We hope you guys enjoyed this video with us. Like this video, subscribe, turn on the post notification bell. We have enabled our super thanks if you like to support the channel that way, as well as our reaction request form is in our description box below. We'll see you soon. Peace.